the Arboretum, the thermometer there, I think, hit 80 a little while ago. Yep.
Maybe they're like a T+3, a special weather channel formula, T+3.
Yeah, I always thought it was something related to like the initialization of something, of like a really short range model.
Hopefully Addis shows us.
Yeah, Addis is doing the circuit, so it would be kind of interesting as I do the forecast first before the observation. I guess we might have to do that though.
Wait on a minute. I started with
You know, I have a little bit related to observations here.
Oh, there it is.
Why did you?
Right
Oh, your backpack is not closed. Be careful. Hope you didn't lose anything on the way.
That could have been bad. All right, thank you everyone for coming to today's weather briefing. We have Paul and Addis from the Penn State Campus Weather Service. Addis is going to be talking about the short-term surface observations, and then Paul will be getting into the forecast afterwards.
All right, as I catch my breath now, let's see how much I can talk about. So, obviously turned out to be a bit warmer than some had anticipated today. Obviously, temperature right now showing on the screen there, it's 77 here at Walker. Average high this time of year is 58, so it's another very unseasonably mild day here in central PA. Which one was the radar? Okay. The radar shows that the rain is still well off to the west. The front's actually dying kind of as it's moving eastward, so a lot of this is not going to impact our weather, at least for the next few hours. But what we do have is cloud cover moving on in, so that, and we're still pretty dry near the surface, so it's going to take some time for any rain to get here. This is the SPC's Mezzo Analysis page. So if we look at the general observations across the state right now, dew points are in the 40s here, and they're in the 40s for much of central and eastern PA. So again, low levels are still pretty dry, so it's going to take a bit of time for things to moisten up, for the entire column to moisten up before we can get any rain. Earlier, the SPC had us in a marginal risk for severe weather, and that, as per Paul Mykolajtchuk himself, as of the 1630 Z update, has been taken off. So we're just in the general thunder category now here in central PA. And I'll show you why. The parameters are very weak today. This is looking at surface-based CAPE, basically zilch here in central PA. And again, that's just because of how dry we are in the low levels, and it's also because of how a bit on the warm side we are a lot. So thermodynamically, we're not prone at all today for any kind of severe weather. I mean, you could get some thunder, but overall, anything that develops today looks to be non-severe. The dynamics are on our side, but obviously you need to produce thunderstorms in order to make them severe first. So do we have the HER pulled up here?
Pivotal weather is pulled up right there, so we can get the HER from there.
All right. Looking at the HER the last few runs, and it's trying to key in on some showers towards this evening. So this is, select the, there. Yep, there. And then we're going to zoom on in here into PA, northeast. Can I use the keys, or is it has the keys? All right. We'll zoom out. Yeah, I think, let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, so this is at 16Z, picking up on that band of showers in western PA with the cold front. Now, as we head towards later this afternoon, you'll really notice that this thing fizzles out. And not only that, but I also noticed when looking at the analysis this morning that there is also a little bit of a vortex in there that's leading to that little band of showers right in there. And so that vortex, obviously if you're ahead of it, you're going to get positive vorticity advection, and that'll tend to promote rising air. And the track of that actually takes it due northeast. So, not only is the front not very strong itself, but the main lifting source in the mid-levels is probably going to miss us here in State College. So, we're pretty much going to be relying on some stuff that develops from the remnants of this rain towards central and southern PA. But anyway, back to the HER and what I was showing. So we'll advance this here. we're now at 21Z. I mean, there really isn't much. Any stuff that is right now across Western PA moves off into New York. And, you know, her earlier did have a band of rain developing for the evening, so around 6, 7 o'clock, but not really picking up on that, at least on this run. And then there will probably be another reinforcing shot of rain that'll develop down towards the Ohio Valley this evening, and that'll probably bring us some rain here in State College as we head after midnight tonight. So I'd anticipate after about 5 or 6Z, there'll be another threat for some showers here in State College. The best chance for rain looks to be just south of here, but the general trend has been to bring up some rain here in Center County after midnight and towards the early morning hours tomorrow. And this is the latest, I believe, visible loop here. And I was talking about the clouds and how they are moving in. So it was kind of just stuck moving from southwest to northeast for a while there, but the clouds have started to advance eastward, and we're even starting to see some more low clouds, some cumulus popping up here at the heat of the day as we're starting to slowly destabilize things. But again, it doesn't look to be anything more than just cloud cover today, except for maybe a few spots that can get some showers this evening. Before I hand it off to Paul, I'll go through what will happen in the next 24 hours. So here's the latest analysis. Again, that front is still actually well off to the west. So I actually didn't show this on the Mezzo Analysis, but there's your front right there where the kink in the isobars is. So again, there's just not a whole lot of lift here in PA today. The stuff down here, this associated with the front, is what's going to be bringing us some rain late tonight into tomorrow morning. And then it does look like after that front crosses, where did WPC go? After that front crosses tomorrow, that we will be experiencing a very nice afternoon. So here we are at 18Z today. The front's starting to push into eastern Ohio. 0Z tonight. Front's already crossing into central and eastern PA. It looks like that's kind of looks like we have doesn't really look to match up to. It looks okay. So the front looks to speed up this evening, and then overnight tonight, that front moves east of PA. So by the time we wake up tomorrow, we'll have our next area of surface high pressure move on in. So probably a cloudy start to the day tomorrow, but once we start to feel more impacts of this high tomorrow, we should start to clear things out by the afternoon tomorrow. Obviously, won't be as warm as we are today, with more of a northerly wind component, given that we will be on the eastern side of this high building on in. But still a nice day tomorrow nonetheless. I think that's all I wanted to mention. We'll throw it off to Paul.
Thank you, Addis. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Mykolajtchuk. I am the Vice President with the Penn State Campus Weather Service. And we're going to be talking about the next few days. I thought it'd be interesting to start off why exactly some forecasts of the NAM were a little too cool. This is yesterday's 18Z run of the NAM, valid 18Z today at 2 p.m. Notice that this gradient of temperatures is noticeably further south and east compared to where we actually are. This is the 12Z run of the NAM, valid hour 6. This is the 18Z run of the NAM, valid hour 24. This was yesterday's 18Z run. So notice that we have a subtle but yet noticeable shift in this gradient right here relative to where we are now. This was 24 hours ago. And the main contributing factor does appear to be these clouds down here. The front was a little slower and then the NAM anticipated, and that had a large impact with our temperatures. There is high uncertainty with regard to how warm we would actually get today as a result of where exactly that gradient would set up, and it does appear as if we're on the warm side of the gradient. The latest observation from the University Park Airport was 79, so it remains to be seen if University Park actually does hit its first 80-degree temperature of the year or not. It's going to be very close. So taking a look at what the NAM is forecasting over the next few days, Addis touched upon this, but this front is not particularly impressive on the NAM as it crosses Pennsylvania. You can see the total accumulated precipitation only gets State College up to a few hundredths of an inch of liquid equivalent precipitation. This is not a very impressive feature on the NAM. And so as a result of that front swinging on through, notice our wind shift to more west-northwesterly as opposed to the more southwesterly component to the wind field we have today. This brings in a cooler air mass for tomorrow, and we get to near seasonable levels, perhaps slightly above seasonable levels on the NAM for Wednesday afternoon. And so Thursday is more the same, it appears. We still have a northwesterly component to the wind flow, and we will get right around 60 on Thursday, probably partly to mostly cloudy skies. And so what's interesting, though, is that once we advance closer toward the weekend, there actually is substantial disagreement with regard to where exactly we go for the weekend. And so the really interesting kind of feature happens here on Saturday. This is the GFS kind of showing a not really too nice Saturday. We have a very cool temperatures relative to this time of year. You can see there's actually 40s is printing out for eastern Pennsylvania as a result of a thick cloud deck over this part of the area. However, this is valid Saturday at 18Z or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. If we look at what the European model is showing for Saturday, this is a totally different depiction. This is showing widespread 70s across almost all of the states. So we have, again, once again, relatively high uncertainty going into at least the first part of the weekend with regard to how warm we get. The European is saying Saturday's a wonderful day, mid-70s. The GFS is saying we're stuck in the clouds in the 50s. So this is clearly a very drastically different sensible weather depiction the GFS is showing relative to what the European model is showing. And so this is the total accumulated precipitation on the European model. Generally speaking, State College averages about 3 inches of rain in April. And so if you were to roughly divide it into 4 weeks per month, you would roughly expect about 3/4 of an inch of rain per month, per week, excuse me, roughly. And so this is showing slightly below average rain for State College. This is showing only about 4/10 of an inch of liquid equivalent precipitation over the next 7 days. This is through hour 156 in the European. So you can see this backs up what the GFS ensemble is actually showing over the next week or so with below average precipitation into the State College area. And so as we look into the extended, there is a general preponderance of ridging over the eastern part of the United States. However, the European is a little more bullish with the extent of the upper level ridge over the eastern part of the United States. The GEFS are a little more flattened out as a result of a stronger signal of a trough into eastern Canada. The European is also digging this trough a little bit more to the west, and that results in corresponding height rises into the east, resulting in a stronger ridge depiction relative to what the GEFS are showing. And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about El Nino as well, because there's really not a lot going on with the weather pattern. And so this current situation with El Nino that we are in is somewhat unusual, actually. As a result, we can see this in the El Nino history here, going back to 1950 with all these El Nino and La Nina events. It is actually relatively unusual to see rapid warming of the tropical Pacific immediately right after we had a very strong El Nino. And so looking back in history, one of the only comparisons I could find to this year was 1963 to 1965 and 66. You can see there was a moderate El Nino in 63, 64, and a weak La Nina 64, 65, and immediately after that weak La Nina in 64, 65, we saw a strong El Nino. And so while 2016 was a strong El Nino, it is possible, according to model guidance, that we see yet another El Nino during the 2017 season. You can see the CPC is showing above average probabilities of El Nino developing by the summer and fall. You can see this is climatologically this red line right here. This red bar, what it's showing right here, is what they are forecasting relative to this red line down here. So it is possible that we could see El Nino down the road. The multi-model ensemble is also showing the strong possibility that that we will see an El Nino later this year into perhaps the autumnal and boreal winter period, but that's getting a little far out. You can see this yellow line right here is the average of the dynamical models, whereas this kind of grayish light blue line is the average of the statistical models. While the average of the statistical models is showing weak neutral to a weak El Nino, the dynamical models are indicating a sizable El Nino to a perhaps a moderate El Nino. This is the line right here. The European is going pretty aggressive with the El Nino. It's showing strong into moderate to strong territory. And actually, as a result, the European hurricane forecast, which came out, shows ACE, the Accumulated Cyclone Energy Index, only at about 70 for this coming season. So the European is really banking on us seeing a pretty decent El Nino to suppress hurricane activity in the Atlantic. Whether we see that strong of an El Nino remains to be seen. However, it does appear as if we are rapidly fading away from a La Nina. This is certainly not a typical depiction you would see for a La Nina. This is more a neutral state, or perhaps even El Nino state, if you look in the eastern tropical Pacific. Any questions?
Kind of a boring pattern, but there's always something to talk about. You want to talk about anything else?
Well,
like 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure. I mean, there is we can talk about the. This is where we are with tornadoes, actually, and so it's really interesting to look at this. That we're actually at the second highest tornado counts that we've seen over the last 15 years. That's not necessarily indicative of the rest of the season, however. As you can see, we are very close to this green line, which is actually 2012. Notice that 2012 really flattened out over the next several months, and we finished at the third lowest over the last 15 years. Whereas we're also very close to 2008, which had a very strong spike into May, which ended up being the highest out of the last 15 years or so. And so it's really interesting to see that while we are pretty high right now, that's not necessarily an indicative of where we will finish once the end of severe weather season rolls around. We can also take a look at where this compares to where other years, climatologically speaking, are. And right here, you can see we're quite a bit above average. We had a few pretty large spikes in the tornado counts, which really brought it up above average. Looking at the SPC outlooks, though, it does appear as if we'll be going to a more of a relative inactive period, and which matches up with what we were looking at with the ensemble guide and showing a large ridge over the east, promoting tranquil conditions. However, on the western periphery of that ridge, you have the potential later on in the season to see that kind of southwesterly flow bringing up more moisture, and that could introduce thunderstorm potential on the western periphery of that ridge. We also have a tropical cyclone in the southeastern portion of, or southwestern portion of the Pacific, actually. And so that was a relatively large cyclone that impacted a few islands. New Caledonia, I believe it's called. And this forecasted track is actually supposed to go into New Zealand. And if we look at the tropical cyclone track for this particular system, its name is Tropical Storm Cook. You can see with the, let's see, can we get the forecast? Does not appear to be so. They have the, right, they have the track, but it doesn't appear they have the forecast track plotted on here. Maybe tropical cyclone. Let's see if that pops up anything. Usually, yeah, so it's interesting that, actually, I think the models are forecasting it to go to an extratropical state. I was looking at the models, and they're still showing a fairly sizable system making landfall into New Zealand, but I guess not as a tropical cyclone. You can see there it is, right there. If we look at the MSLP right here, the GFS is showing it make landfall into New Zealand here as a 974. So New Zealand is about to get a sizable system, regardless if it's still tropical at that point. We can zoom in as well onto the GFS. And there it is, 974 into northern Greenland, northern New Zealand, they keep calling it Greenland. And so a sizable impacting cyclone is on the way for that part of the world.
Anybody else have? Anybody have a question?
Concern? Anyone have any concern?
Did anybody have any concerns? Whether we see mostly cloudy skies or partly cloudy skies here on Thursday?
Anyone think UND will hit 80?
Who thinks 80?
We were at 79.
No takers for 80.
Oh, that answer just updated a minute ago, actually.
Oh, did it? Well, then we can take a look at the,
They were updating it.
let's take a look. Well, that's as of the 12:53
You can look it
update. Oh, sorry. That's okay.
That was not updating either. What do we at Walker? Still the same. Remains to be seen.
So no any questions for Addis?
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thank you.
Do I have your permissions to tweet a picture of you guys in action?